Hello gamers, I am Mike TheZorch and this is Retro Spotlight. A few years ago I did a series of videos for Gamers Bay that looked at games on Atari Vault. That's a collection of arcade and Atari 2600 games that was made available on various platforms including Steam and various consoles. And I covered a lot of their arcade games and some of their Atari 2600 games, and that was a few years ago. Well, an update to Atari Vault was released, and they included a lot of new arcade games, including a lot of Atari 5200, well, not a lot, but a few, and some new 2600 games that haven't been available before. Some of them are from M Network, and I'll be talking about those when I get to those games. But today, we're going to look at a game from 1979 released by Atari called Avalanche. And here we are in Atari Vault. This is Avalanche. Avalanche is one of those early Golden Age era arcade games running off of the MOS 6502, which a lot of arcade games during this era did because it was such a versatile, such easy to program for, and you could readily find people who knew how to write code for this CPU because it was used all over the place. And it was used on just about every early arcade game from Atari and a lot of other companies during that time. And during that time, a lot of games were pretty simple. This one is pretty simplistic. You control the game using a rotary wheel. Now, of course, I don't have a rotary wheel here. I'm using a mouse instead. But there are rocks falling from the top of the screen, and you have a series of buckets, or they look like lines, you have to catch the rocks with. And it's basically an avalanche, and you have to stop the avalanche. Now, Activision released a unofficial port of this called Kaboom for the 2600. I think you may have been more familiar with that game, where you have someone at the top of the screen dropping bombs and you have to catch them in buckets of water to stop them. That was an unofficial port. There was never any legal action taken by Atari over that. I mean, they're dissimilar enough that there wasn't really any case there. But let's get into Avalanche, and this is a pretty simple game. Simple, but as you will find, not that easy to master. So let's get in. All right. Okay, come on. Catch him, catch him, catch him. Gotta catch them all. Didn't catch them all. All right, come on. Oh, I mean, they're going away. Oh, okay. Ah! All right. They're getting smaller. They're getting faster. And I don't have a rotary wheel control. Ah! Ah! Let's try that again. Right, get in the groove, get in the groove, get in the groove, get in the groove, get in the groove. I'm losing one of my buckets. Yes, that signifies it getting full. Okay, the smaller ones, oh, the smaller ones fall faster. Oh. But you gotta be quick. Did my bucket shrink? Let's try that again. Come on. Come on. Come on. I have yet to actually stop all of them. As I said, this is simple to play. Master, not so much. This needs rotary controls. Seriously. More. If anybody knows a good rotary retro control for PC, put it in the comments below. I would definitely want to grab one for this. If I can get it to work. I know there are Atari joysticks. I may pick up some for these, especially when doing the Commodore 64 games, but doing these old arcade games. Alright. Okay, so here comes the little ones. Here comes the little ones. Oh, come on. Oh! Okay. These little ones are fast. Not fast enough. Well, that's Avalanche. As I said, it is simple to play, but not that easy to master. This is just a basic game that was released in '79. The games back then were pretty basic. They were pretty simple. They were not that complex, and they were fun. Video games were a new thing back then, so people really didn't know what made a video game, or what video games could potentially become, how complex games could eventually become. They were just these simple little arcade games, and they were fun, and they made Atari a lot of money. I'm sure there's not a lot of information on this one. I checked a few wikis to find out if there was any kind of data on how much this one may have earned, or how popular this one may have been. Not a lot of information about it. There's hardly any information about a lot of these early arcade games out there, on how many were distributed, how many people used them. A lot of these games back then would have shown up in bars, in restaurants. Arcades didn't start becoming a big thing with video game arcade games until 78. So this would have been showing, started showing up in some arcades. 80s is really when arcades really started showing up in Detroit, where I grew up. So that the little arcades really didn't start showing up until the 80s for me. But in some other places, some arcades may have popped up in the late 70s. But there's very little information on just how much of an impact this game had on Atari or on the arcade scene at all. Still, it's a fun little game. It's a part of the Atari Vault collection now. You have to get the DLC that includes this and a bunch of other stuff to it, and I'll be covering those in future installments of Retro Spotlight. Until next time, I have been Mike TheZorch. Thanks for watching.